Marc Emery joins us from a prison in Yazoo, Mississippi. Marc, it's good to have a chance to talk to you, and I asked you to share with me 3 or 4 points which you consider most important that you have an opportunity to address in this conversation. We have limited time, so I want to start right away with the points that you felt were most important to talk about. And the number one point that you wanted to make was Justin Trudeau. You preferred Justin Trudeau over Stephen Harper or Thomas Mulcair, and it's specifically because of the drug prohibition issue?
Well, first of all, Justin Trudeau is a likable person, and I would say that Thomas Mulcair and Stephen Harper are not particularly likable. They're tough guys. They pride themselves on being tough guys, and Justin Trudeau is an evolving person, and Stephen Harper is not an evolving person, and neither is Thomas Mulcair. They're wedded to a certain dogma.
But where does the marijuana come into the situation? Where does Justin Trudeau's preference, or maybe not preference, but acceptance of marijuana, greater acceptance than maybe Mulcair or Harper, come into play for you?
Well, Stephen Harper is never going to change his point of view. He never has changed his point of view, and Thomas Mulcair is very wedded to his. But Justin Trudeau was once opposed to marijuana legalization, decriminalization, and now he's evolved to the point where he's accepting it, and he's promoting it, and he's doing it so with enthusiasm. He's the kind of person who can change his mind, and it's considered a good thing. And I think that's what we need in Canadian politics, and I think he's going to be popular. I think the idea of decriminalizing marijuana these days is, to me, an antiquated thing. It's very much rooted in the past. I mean, we were promised decriminalization 42 years ago after the Ledane Commission, and his father, Prime Minister Trudeau, said we were going to decriminalize marijuana in August 1970. 42 years and 2 million Canadians arrested and hundreds of thousands put into jail since then, all for marijuana, and we still are just merely talking about decriminalization of marijuana. I think he's going to go a step further. I think in the next 6 months to a year, he's going to say we need a whole new system of taxation, regulation, and controlled distribution of marijuana, and that's the thing that Canadians really need. It's the only thing that will address the problems of cartels, gangs, and the associated problems that we've had with prohibition all this time.
Marc, then questions are going to be asked, questions like this. Do we want a prime minister who smokes pot?
Well, first of all, we don't know if he's smoking pot contemporarily. I've smoked pot with him, but that was in the year 2003. He looked familiar with it. It certainly didn't seem to be his first time he ever smoked marijuana. And he's comfortable with that. And that's what you need. You need a prime minister that is comfortable. Now, Jack Layton, by the way, came to my home in 2003, in the very same year, and did an interview with me where he said he wanted to regulate...
from a federal prison.
As if you didn't know. And Jack Layton wanted to have a regulated system to sell marijuana, to have it distributed, and to bring back... And it's quite a stunning interview that I think never hurt Jack Layton. His popularity continued to improve after that interview. So, and also, Jack Layton was a very likable person. And that's what we have in Justin Trudeau, a very likable person who's got the most modern point of view, and it's going to keep evolving, and I think that's going to be popular. I think people are tired of these tough guys rooted in their dogma, trying to out-tough the other guy. I think Justin Trudeau's openness is going to be a big selling factor, and I'm going to support him. I think he's going to be very promising for Canadians.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see where this stands in 2015 or 16 when the next federal election takes place. Some of the points that do you mind if I just read your answers when I said I'd like you to share with me the points that you think are most important? Okay, if I just read what you wrote?
Sure.
You wrote, what are the arguments in favor of prohibition that justify 60 to 90,000 dead in Mexico in just the last 6 years, or civil wars in Colombia and Guatemala, or a police state in America, or the millions in jail worldwide over drugs? Speak to that.
Well, we've had 42 years of prohibition in Canada. We've had 2 million Canadians arrested for pot, and we've had hundreds of thousands of those spend time in jail. What was the benefit to Canadian society for all that punishment, for all that cruelty, for the colossal waste of taxpayers' money, for all the powers that we've given the police, SWAT teams, their militarization of the police, the surveillance capabilities, all the undercover officers, informants, the kind of police state that we're supposed to fear as a democracy, we brought in because of the drug war. So what was the benefit? What did we get in return for all that sacrifice, for all those violations of civil liberties, people put in jail? 2 million Americans are in jail right now, and half of them are for drugs. I mean, we've got 10,000 people being killed every year in Mexico for this drug war. Where's the benefit? What did we get? as taxpayers for all that colossal waste of our treasure, for all that cruelty, for all that police state, for all the people in jails. What do we get for it? I've never heard a politician articulate what was to be given to us that could justify the carnage, the slaughter, the colossal waste of money, the prison industrial state. Nothing. The police powers that have been given out over the last, and the incredible budgets that every municipality in Canada and the United States has to prop up a fabulously large police service, a lot of which goes to drug detection. What did we get for it? Nothing.
There are senior police officials who agree with you. There are medical public health care officials who agree with you. There are politicians who, in fact, agree with you.
But I want
to make sure that I get the points on because we're fighting the clock here. You have limited time. The next point that you made was this. Why did my governments, both Liberal, Cotler in 2005, and Conservative, Nicholson and Taves in 2006 to 2010, sign on to my extradition when the head of the DEA said my actions were clearly about legalizing marijuana and all my actions were in Canada? As a response to that, what I get from folks I talk to is look, Marc Emery knew what the law was. He broke it with impunity. He deserves what he got.
Well, here's the thing that I think. You're not talking about any Canadian here. For over 3 decades of my life, all my adult life, I've devoted myself to peaceful democratic protests, peaceful democratic means of bringing about a freer, more just society in Canada. I think my record is such a wide, huge record, really, of service to Canada. There's no other Canadian that has a resume equal to mine. Just there simply isn't. No one's ever given themselves to this country like I have. I have paid my dues, and yet at the same time, I was extradited to another country. Why? I could have been charged in Canada. And you know what? No judge would probably have sent me to jail. I could have been dealt with transparently in my own country, but instead, both governments, the Liberal and Conservative, and by and large the Canadian people, abandoned someone who's done 30 years of service to this country. I was sent here because I sold seeds from my desk in Canada. No one else in the United States is in jail for seeds. No one else in Canada is in jail for seeds, let alone sent away 5 years after a record of service like mine. So,
well, I have to tell you, when Irwin Cotler okayed you being extradited to the United States, I said, wait a minute, this is the same guy who sat in a government that was ready to decriminalize marijuana and went out and tried to get votes on that basis, Jean Chrétien, Paul Martin, and his then Justice Minister, Martin Cochon.
Well, what I find more loathsome about Irwin Cotler is he prides himself on being a famous human rights activist, and yet he would turn me over to the United States, which has been responsible for this bloody war for 40 years, this drug war, this worldwide drug war that's involved really millions of victims. Millions of people have died over this drug war. Tens of millions have been incarcerated worldwide in the last 40 years. It's a staggering, brutal.
So when the argument is made, Mark, that marijuana is a gateway drug and it starts people on this miserable trail all the way to heroin and beyond, you're not buying.
Well, first of all, neither is the Canadian public. 70% of the people in British Columbia want to legalize marijuana, and the clear majority of Canadians want to legalize marijuana. But that means everybody who ever took marijuana will be on to harder drugs. So that means Justin Trudeau is going to be imminently a cocaine or heroin addict, or for that matter, every other Canadian prime minister. Prime Minister Martin admitted his wife made him pot brownies at one time, and the only reason Stephen Harper said he didn't ever smoke marijuana is that when it was offered to him, he was too drunk to accept it. So we've got a nation of people that have used drugs but still managed to prosper in positions of authority, like President Clinton or President Bush, and for that matter, Barack Obama, all admitted to smoking marijuana and doing other drugs, and yet we take it for granted that they're in these positions of authority and respect and power. So that argument is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if anything is a gateway to something else. No one should have to go to jail for their personal choices that don't harm others.
All right, when you're released from prison, let's just build on that point. When you're released from prison, if the laws haven't changed and the sale of and consumption of marijuana remain a criminal offense, what will you do?
Well, I'm going to listen. Regardless of anywhere in the world there's going to be injustice over a drug war, I'm going to be fighting that. And I'm certainly going to be doing it primarily in Canada. And certainly, if Canada is still under the same horrible regime as it is now, and we haven't yet begun to see the terrible impact of Harper's mandatory minimums that came into effect only a few weeks ago. So when I get back to Canada, unfortunately, Canada will probably be in a worse state than when I left, and that's a tragic thing. I promise people, if they don't do their job while I'm gone and make marijuana legal and reduce the pernicious effects of this prohibition, by which there is no possible justification. There is nothing good about prohibition that could possibly sustain it in the people's minds, and that yet if they permit Harper and his allies and the compassionless zombies that are in his party that keep this going, then I'm going to have to come back and I'm going to have to get as serious as I ever was about ending this prohibition. My job will still be the same, but my wife has done an incredible job in my absence, and I'm very proud of her. And so we're going to take this up as a couple, and I hope we'll be very successful.
Marc, I appreciate the time. It's good talking to you. Thank you so much.
All right, bye now.
Bye-bye. Marc Emery.